last year we produced an article as part of our EFMD magazine Global Focus supplement about being human centered. And a lot of the theme there was about leaders, looking after, caring for their people, investing in their workforce, and so on. Has the mood in the world changed somewhat, where the hard-nosed, financially driven leaders are kind of taking over? Are we looking at a less, perhaps less caring, but more profit-driven environment, particularly where things like diversity programs are concerned? Seems like DEI is a target for some people. Has the world gone too soft? Has it gone too woke? I guess is the theme.
The voices that are pushing for back to work or that are pushing back against DEI are tend to be incredibly wealthy individuals acting in their own interests. And if you are a leader of a company and you see yourself as independent, typically, although this, I'm not wanting to be defamatory, but if you've got a complex labyrinthine structure of offshore holding companies and are not particularly keen to pay taxes in the country where you run your operations, let's say, there's there's some common threads here. But if we step up a level and think more broadly about what a government wants for its people, it wants, arguably, I would say, people to be working, paying taxes, contributing to broader society, to infrastructure that's needed, education, health, airports, railways, roads, whatever it may be, and that is in the best interests of a country. And if that's not being inclusive, then I don't know what is. It's not in a country's best interest to have vast parts of different demographics out of work, causing trouble or being a drain on other resources. It's not. It doesn't feel like that's. And even in our instinct, it doesn't feel right. Let alone when we start to look at the evidence and the metrics of this and what research has shown us that it's good when people are in work. Of course, the type of work matters, but when it's unregulated or it's illegal work and so on, of course, that's problematic. But yeah, that's the bit that's troubling to me, where we have to listen to where these voices are coming from, and we have to ask, well, what's the agenda here, and then decide whether that's something that we need to push back against. If we take do we still need human centered leaders as our kind of starting point? Well, yes, we need them more than ever. And as our knowledge increases and we are more connected than we've ever been, yes, we need human centered leaders. Take neurodiversity, for example, in the workplace, which is at risk of in a way being sidelined when DEI initiatives are rolled back or stopped. And we're at a point where we've got more understanding and we need a more human-centered approach for quite large numbers of individuals in the workplace. For me, and I don't think it's just a moral or an ethical frame here, it's a good thing to figure out how to treat each other better, to find ways of adapting work so that individuals feel inspired, are able to bring their best, contribute to profitability and sustainability of a company. I struggle on a personal level to see why that's not a good thing. And I think the research that I've seen and company experience, companies that have generally tried to do that are stronger, better, deliver better returns. When I think about the work that I've done in social impact, so if there's a voice saying, "Roll this back. This is not good." I'm left wondering what the motive is, and Peter perhaps will go. Perhaps there's a motive, but it's not that honourable, or or we're kind of left thinking, well, what a way to live.
Yeah, I do think um, there's always inequality. and there will always, I hope the gap gets smaller. And when there's inequality, it's important when education comes in, knowledge comes in, and that's where, I love being part of Future World Forum, right? Because we discuss and spread the message that of positive movements towards the betterment of human life or human potential as well. And I am a bit cautious of speed of change that companies are not yet able to understand the way jobs and careers, for example, are going to shift. So I was just reading now that the OECD predicts that 50% of careers will become portfolio careers. So people are working more. But back to Ben's point, doesn't mean that, you will have a better life, or are you going to have more than 7 to 7 hours working hours. Does that means that you do not get the benefits that you typically get as a full-time headcount employee with the employee package? I think these are things that are not yet figured out, at least with the work that I've seen or organizations here. And that means that there's an opportunity as well. And I like to see hope for the positive side of it, that there would be now the need for understanding how do we move or help companies move towards this trend of gig work or portfolio careers work or fractional work, and ensuring that compensation is fair, is justifiable, work is based outcome driven, driven. There is still progression. Doesn't mean that you gig worker you don't want career progression. There is still work-life harmony. But I don't think companies, at least the ones I've interacted with, understand how to implement this fully. And Peter, we also wrote about the skills-based economy, right? So that's also adding to this conversation. So having said that, I think do need to be an advocate with the partners that we work with, to start off that process and say, okay, provide this opportunity. It also means we should look at all the different factors that contributes to a better talent strategy, and also one that benefits the individuals. And in addition, also have that understanding that this can also contribute to diversity and inclusion, because it means that individuals who may not be able to do full-time work, such as those that I work with a lot, who has child caring or parent care or the care responsibility, can also benefit. And that education bit that I mentioned previously to solve this inequality issue is also crucial, because individuals are getting more and more financially savvy, which means that the need to rely on one salary from one organization is actually one that is now frowned upon from what I've seen, which means that, we just like anything else, you are not, there should be a diversification of financial resources, or how do you invest and how do you grow, so that there is sufficient for education, for the children, for retirement. So there's a lot of discussion here on the financial bit, which I think is important, because financial means power, right? You have the power to dictate what do you do next, what opportunity that comes up. And if you're financially free, you could not work, or you could do 100 work, but 100 types of work. But the option belongs to you, and the independence, I think, it's a much talk about topic here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think post-COVID, a lot of people have questioned the place of work in their lives. Before then, they were commuting every day, getting up early in the morning, traveling to work, sitting at a desk in an office or in a factory, whatever, doing a job without really stopping and thinking about it. That was just life. That's what their parents did. That's what they expected to do. Then suddenly there's a discontinuity. You can't physically go into the office. You have to use technology, stay at home, work on your own. And all of a sudden people realize there are alternatives. Oh, and I get to talk to my family more, and that's good. And I don't need the same childcare arrangements and so on. And so there's a kind of a shift a bit. And yeah, there's evidence to show that post-COVID, a number of people have left the workforce or left full-time employment because they realized that in terms of their total life, they'd focused too much on their career and earning money and not so much as their responsibility to their family and the society they live in and the bigger picture.
And it's interesting, like I said earlier, when we look at where the voices calling for this style or this approach or the back to work are coming from, it is a fairly narrow demographic. I'm just going to leave it at that. And if you think about how diverse are those voices calling for it, we're going to struggle. I'd also observe that we're talking about, in a sense, it's a narrow lens on sort of knowledge workers that we've had some of our conversation from. But if we're in schools, in an education setting, or in a health setting, or if we're in manufacturing, on a shop floor with a lot of workers, or if we're in hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and so on, then we are talking about, when we talk about human-centered leadership, absolutely, we still need human-centered leadership in those contexts. So I want to put that in, and we need to advocate for human-centered leadership in those contexts where people don't have so much choice. They can't work fully remotely. So in the settings where there's a lot of human interaction, yes, we need human-centered leadership. So let me stop there.
Yeah, good place.
I am going to be provocative and say that I am more than happy for performative DEI to be dead. I am sitting here in the lead up to the International Women's Day, and I have had a tremendous amount of young women who have been tasked with finding an underpaid speaker to entertain and inspire the other women in their organizations. And I am completely sick of it. I feel like they're wasting their time, they're underinvesting. This happens every year. And if that goes away, then yeah, great. Let's get back to work and think about the things that are really strategic for the organization. If it's an equitable organization that's investing in finding the best talent and promoting them, and we all know that doesn't happen really that well, but if you can, truly invest in making that better, then great. So that's my provocative view on DEI for the moment.
That's great. So you're saying there's too much lip service being served to DEI as a program, and then not enough genuine equality in terms of the leadership that's been exhibited. I guess I'm trying to summarize it.
Yep. And I fundamentally believe that for many circumstances, for creativity and collaboration versus maybe just executing on, the old playbook, I think that diversity and the opportunity as our population depopulates and birth rates go and people age, that you're going to have to embrace diversity in order to get not only the best people, but just any people to be in your organization. So that's part of the trend. But it has to be smart. And there are great programs and there are places where that works. But yes, I think that a lot of it has been superficial.
Okay. Ben, your take on that?
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree at all. I think, the tokenism is the bane of my life, really. And it just doesn't get underneath and really meaningfully shift things for organizations. And ultimately that has an impact on profitability and sustainability of an organization. Right thinking organizations are those that seek diverse talent base, that adapt to accommodate genius, which comes with a shadow or limiting behaviors. Right thinking organizations adapt the working day for individuals to enable those individuals to bring their best. They always have, and they always will. And like I said earlier, we have to listen to where the voices that say roll all that back are coming from. People who are threatened about their power and privilege or their status being undermined. They don't have people underneath them scrabbling. Something is crumbling, but they might be able to preserve that for a little bit. But I think, Diana, for the reasons you say, we have to acknowledge, and the evidence is there, and investors are looking at this. They want sustainable profitability. I think so for sure. A lot of people are still into get rich quick, right? And that's going to be a tension that we have to operate within. And that does mean that you can treat people poorly, and you can discriminate for as long as you can get away with it illegally, perhaps. And then you might get very wealthy, and then you can disappear, or you can go off to your offshore island and enjoy that. But that's not, as I said as well, what a miserable way to live for the majority. And so in terms of human-centered leadership, not every job's going to bring joy and meaning and purpose for every individual, for sure. But, we can at least make it decent with a degree of humanity and integrity and fairness, and pay a decent wage. So if that's what it means, that's more interesting to me.